monkeys and the dragons are in a fight that will just give you vertigo for like days after being in the theater. Hey YouTube, welcome back to WeSibz, West Coast, East Coast siblings. West Coast, East Coast siblings? East, this way. Today we are talking about Godzilla vs. Kong, The New Empire. Just a CYA, these tend to not be my type of movies for a bunch of reasons I'm about to get into. But for those of you who are like, I love Godzilla, I love Kong, and you know what's really messed up? I actually love the Matthew Broderick Godzilla, one of my favorites. And I actually also really love the Kong with Adrian Brody. Those are like gemstones. That and like Sky Captain of the World Tomorrow. Random movies that I absolutely love. Anyway, this movie, I'm still debating on whether or not I want to break down the actual storyline for you guys, because for the first point that I'm going to bring up is that a lot of these movies are the same in that you're not here for the storyline, okay? You're here for the action, right? So we'll see if I actually break it down. But as of right now, this will be a spoiler-free review. That may change. These kinds of movies, these big epic monster movies, tend to lack storyline. They tend to not be great on the acting front, and they also tend to not be that funny when they're trying to be and hilarious when they're not. They also try really, really hard for heart and depth of emotion, and they tend to also miss that target. Also, disclaimer, I saw it in 3D, which is probably one of the stupidest decisions I've made in a very long time. One, if you're gonna see it in IMAX. Two, 3D is just not worth it. It's like not like Spy Kids 3, you know, where they're like, ugh, you know, like it's not like that anymore. So maybe take this review with a grain of salt. Let's get into the stuff you wanna hear about. So the effects, you guys, I sat in the theater and I was saying, again, I don't get why people like these movies. And then that third act was freaking insane. And I said, you know what? Screw it. Who cares about any of that stuff? When I tell you the action was insane. Oh, it was so good. Oh my goodness. So let's talk about a couple of those big epic moments that were just like, oh, I get it. So at some point they end up in Hollow Earth and you have Godzilla, Kong fighting the Skull King, and I'm gonna call it his ice dragon, but it's basically a giant white Godzilla that breathes ice and is really pretty. I don't know what the names of these characters are, so if I butcher the names, I apologize, okay? And they get into a fight, and it's not just any fight, guys. It's a freaking anti-gravity fight. Like, when I tell you the monkeys and the dragons are in a fight that will just give you vertigo for like days after being in the theater. And even though it's so jarring, it's freaking awesome. Like, anti-gravity fight. My nerd is coming out. Another big scene I want to talk about is with those same four characters, but they end up on the surface in Rio de Janeiro. And it is, again, a freaking epic fight. I mean, there's this one moment where Godzilla, and I'm just going to say Godzilla / Magenta, is like full of all of this radiation and just goes ham on Skull King. I mean, it's freaking great. It's just like, ah, ah. And I get it, I'm an explosion girl. I love explosions. Like, explosions and fight choreo, I just love it. I don't really love buildings being smashed and whatnot, and I'm not gonna lie, this is the first action movie I've ever watched where I was like, what about all those people? They're losing their homes and likely their lives. I've lived in California too long. Anyway, other big action scenes I think we should also mention are, so throughout the movie, Godzilla is basically going to these different places on the earth where there's a lot of nuclear energy and soaking it up, sort of getting ready for a big fight that he's going to have. And in a lot of those locations, there's a kaiju guarding it. So there's a big crab one at the beginning, but there's another one where he is fighting, I think it's Tiamatu. Godzilla fights Tiamatu, which is basically this giant magenta water serpent eel thing, and like that scene is also really epic. And what makes it super cool is that they're underwater doing it, so I thought that was really cool too. And of course, that's when he goes from blue to pink. Oh my gosh, this is basically Blue's Clues. All in all, you guys, I thought this movie was pretty epic, and that's saying something because, again, this is not my genre. But I would say go in the theaters. It's gonna give you that adrenaline rush that you want, but you gotta sit with it and wade through it a little bit. The acting, Rebecca Hall, fine. A little aggressive. And I think Please don't cancel me. You know, just a little like, you know. Dan Stevens, gotta love him. Super weird in this, but like I think that's the point. Brian Tyree Henry, actually disappointingly not funny, like at all. I don't think I laughed at him doing anything. The only thing that I laughed at was when Godzilla took the little red monkey and used him to beat up some of the other monkeys. That was hilarious. I think that was actually the only moment that I laughed. Again, it's not a comedy. You don't go for the laughs, so like maybe don't hold that against them. All right, well, this review went exceptionally short, so I guess I will tell you a little bit about what happens in the movie. I'll give you a little storyline. So here we go. Spoiler warning. I'm just gonna give you the bullet points of what happens, all right? Because honestly, I say you go see it in the movies. All right, so a signal is coming from somewhere. We don't know where it's coming from, and it's causing the little main girl to have some bad dreams, and she's drawing really big mountains on a piece of paper. Ironically enough, those big mountains correspond to some seismic energy activity thingy that's also happening on a piece of paper. This leads the whole team, Rebecca, Dan, and Henry, to figure out where the signal's coming from. Now, Kong comes up from Middle Earth, Hollow Earth, not Middle Earth. Sorry, Lord of the Rings. Kong comes up from Hollow Earth because he has a busted tooth, I guess. They follow him back down and try to figure out where the signal's coming from. They find out that the signal is coming from an actual group of people that's living in Hollow Earth. These people are the Iwi, but they're like super ancient. Remember, the Iwi are the people that the little girl came from back on Skull Island. You really don't need to see that to see this movie. Right, so the signal is coming from them. They find out that it's not just any signal, it's a signal calling out for help, right? Now, up on the surface, the scientists up there start to realize that the signal is triggering Godzilla, and so Godzilla is like making moves in relation to the signal. Now, the people down in the Hollow Earth realize that the Iwi are calling Godzilla to help save them. For what? For why, you say? They realize that Kong is down there all by himself. He's feeling lonely. He's feeling sad. He needs some friends. And so he's exploring Hollow Earth. And that's when he runs into this adorable little red monkey. If I'm correct, I remember Christopher saying something about that monkey being important or a nod to somebody else. I don't know, Donkey Kong? Kong follows the little red monkey. He discovers that there are other monkeys with him, and these are all a bunch of monkeys, and there's one really, really big red monkey who seems very angry. Now let's cut to the humans back in the Hollow Earth with the Iwa. Through some very, very impressive and kind of unbelievable hieroglyphic reading, homegirl Rebecca tells us the story of how the red monkeys end up in this fiery place. Basically what happens is their king, or the Skull King, he wants to take over the surface. So he gets to the surface, tries to take over, but Godzilla steps in, breathes him with some crazy radiation, shuts all the monkeys down, and locks them in a fiery furnace. Back to Kong. So Kong and the little red monkey are like, Kong is seeing what's going on. Kong gets in a fight with people. However, the Skull King does kind of overpower him. So Kong is running back to the humans and the Ewok to get their help. Of course, they conclude, well, we need Godzilla. And so Godzilla tries to go up to the surface and so Kong tries to go up to the surface to get Godzilla's help, but they're like, oh no, that's not gonna work, because as soon as Kong is on the surface, Godzilla's gonna attack him. So that's when they're like, we need Mothra's help. So Mothra, one of like the biggest, baddest kaiju, I guess basically like their queen, she steps in and she keeps Godzilla from destroying Kong, makes them unite in their fight against the Skull King. Now we should also note that the Skull King has somehow entrapped and enslaved a giant white kaiju that is absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna call it the Ice Dragon. He's trapped it and uses that as his slave. So when Kong was trying to get help from the humans and the Iwa, he inadvertently led the Skull King and his crazy monkeys not only to the Iwa people in the sacred triangle temples, but also to the surface. They do this super cool epic anti-gravity fight that I was telling you about. They go through the portal and end up on the surface, where the big epic fight in Rio ensues. Obviously, Kong and Godzilla win, and the day is saved, and they all live happily ever after. I feel like I'm probably missing some big points, but anyway, I was just bullet pointing the main things that happened in the story. All in all, you guys, I think it was an excellent movie. I'm not gonna lie, that was first 30 minutes, I was like, why am I here? But I've kind of felt like that with all of the Godzilla and King Kong movies. So maybe you like that kind of thing. The third act was epic. And that is why you go to the theater. Yeah, guys, I think that's it. As always, like this video if you like this video, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you can be notified of when we drop videos, because we're going to be dropping them more often. Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks, guys.